I'm going to talk a little bit about what I've kind of been calling crypto philosophy, and I get a little bit into the power of DACs as a new business model. Got a lot of slides, so I'm going to jump through them pretty quick. Myself, again, I'm Luke Stokes. I'm a witness on Steam. I've been a witness for over a year now, so I'm very familiar with delegated proof of stake and those kind of systems. I'm also joined the launch team for eosDAC. So I'm a block producer, part of a block producer team for eosDAC on EOS. And I'm also run an EOS proxy, Luke EOS proxy. I was pretty excited to get that shout out from Ash earlier today. If you're looking for a proxy, definitely go check that out. I'd appreciate it. We can help make EOS an awesome thing. So when I talk about crypto philosophy, it's kind of came together in this one tweet a little while ago. And essentially it's this intersection of all these different disciplines, including macroeconomics, cryptocurrency, blockchain technology, ethics, entrepreneurship, voluntarism, governance, futurism, and a whole bunch of other things. And I really love this. This is what I'm passionate about. I sold my business this year after 10 years so that I could focus pretty much full time on this new model. So as you're probably familiar, this is the price of Bitcoin. It's looking a little sad lately. I bought my first Bitcoin right about there. I spent $50 and I got 2.5 Bitcoin. So pretty good purchase. And now I sold a good amount right about there and paid off my house. So that was in 2017. I was very excited to do that. Of course, it would have been nice to sell there, obviously, but nobody could see the future, right? I still am heavily involved in cryptocurrency, so I didn't sell all of it, but it was one of those things where it's just kind of a crazy volatile thing. We normally think about the market price of Bitcoin when we're talking about any kind of economics. I've been doing presentations about Bitcoin since 2013. There's a video out on the internet back then. Even I was saying why I think Bitcoin could be more disruptive than the internet. And my reason for that is I went into kind of the history of central banking, the history of fiat money itself, kind of where money comes from. And that deep dive into that understanding really impacted me in a pretty significant way. And I started, the average lifespan of a fiat currency is about 27 years, for example. And since the Nixon shock in 1971, the US dollar is kind of living on borrowed time. And there have been 700 something different fiat currencies throughout history, and most of them fail. Also, there have been probably, I think, 6 or 7 world reserve currencies. So thinking that the US dollar is going to remain a world reserve currency is probably not logical. So at some point, something is going to be massively disruptive. And I think that cryptocurrencies and blockchain technologies are going to play a big part of that. So a little bit more of the story as I got into understanding this stuff is, I started looking at proof of work and getting excited about Bitcoin. I bought my first miner. I bought an Avalon ASIC 3 way back in 2013. And I was like, we're going to pay off our house with this thing. And I was so excited about it. And it, of course, showed up 3 months late. And because of that, we had all kinds of expectations that weren't met. And then on top of that, when I plugged it in the very next morning, this is what I woke up to. You could smell the acid smell of burning electrical fire. And I thought I was going to pay off my house. I'm just glad I didn't burn down my house. And it was 100 Bitcoin is my entire stash at the time. So it's pretty discouraging, but I was able to part it out on bitcointalk.org. And, but it just kind of put a little sour taste in my mouth for proof of work. And during that same time, we saw this massive decline in the price of Bitcoin. I didn't sell during this decline because I saw the future value of cryptocurrency, but it was a pretty discouraging time. I was doing a Bitcoin meetup in Nashville, and there was a lot of discouragement, disillusionment. It was really a bummer because I was like, wait, isn't this the technology that's going to disrupt the nation state governments and the central banks and their monopoly on currency creation and their monopoly on violence? Like this money funds wars. And I thought this was going to be the solution to make everything better. And so I was pretty discouraged. Also, my company that I was running at the time, FoxyCart, is an e-commerce shopping cart platform. And I was really kind of pretty bummed about, like, we couldn't get merchants to sign up to use BitPay. We actually have a Wikipedia entry, the Bitcoin wiki mentions FoxyCart, because we were one of the first e-commerce platforms to integrate, and we couldn't get them to sign up. And so there was this kind of user adoption lag that was really, really frustrating and discouraging. And I also just wanted to throw this in there. The current Bitcoin price graph looks quite similar, although it starts at 20 grand and it goes down to 6, but just one of those things, again, I'm holding, and we'll see what happens in the future. But I thought it was interesting to notice that. So as I was getting discouraged with proof of work and lack of actual everyday adoption for normal people, along came Steemit. And this is where my delegated proof of stake journey started. And I was just really excited because, you've got free transactions on the blockchain, 3-second confirmation times. You've got account recovery, which is just this amazing thing when you think about public and private key encryption. Generally, when you lose your private key, that's it. There's nothing you can do. But this account recovery model was something I was really excited about. I'm like, okay, this could protect everyday people, protect their property. There's also time lock savings accounts, staking rewards, all these kind of things. And I started seeing everyday people actually use a blockchain for something they already do anyway, just blogging. And also, of course, BitShares as well. Now, as you, I'm sure, know, both of these are delegated proof of stake blockchains, and they're both invented by Dan Larimer, who also invented EOS. And BitShares is another great application. It kind of, during the Mt. Gox hack, this is kind of an idea saying, oh, we need decentralized exchanges. We need a new way of doing this that can protect people's property better. So I started getting excited again. I started seeing on-chain voting and worker proposals with Smart Cash and Dash and BitShares and PivX and many others. This idea that more and more people are turning to on-chain governance and really thinking about how much you can use voluntary token inflation to pay for things that the community wants. And this idea that like a job could just go away. We won't be locked into something that we don't like to do, aren't passionate about. Instead, we could just jump in and out of different projects whenever we want and get paid very well to do it. And so more and more, I started seeing the need for on-chain governance. I'm saying, okay, well, the obvious questions are who actually controls this? Who manages the money? How does this get managed when you start doing all these things on chain? And at that same time, again, we're starting to see 3 of the top 5 most active blockchains on the entire planet are delegated proof of stake. So there's this mechanism where you can do a lot more things more efficiently because they're not using proof of work. They're electing the block producers directly. And it's kind of a cooperation over competition kind of system. And so there's this amazing alignment of incentives that I see with DPOS. And we're going to get to how this changes economic models because it enables things that just previously weren't possible. The token holders can directly participate in the governance process. And although Bitcoin has like user activated soft and hard forks, that's kind of their only mechanism to kind of have their voice be heard. And I was part of the whole community in 2014, 2015, 2016, 2017. I started watching that discouragement happen as people were trying to fight over that block size debate. And there just wasn't enough on-chain governance to handle it. Whereas with Steem, I can just go in, click a button, use my active key and vote for a producer. And it's just very clear that if a producer supports a direction I want the blockchain to go, I have my voice can be heard. So when I think about governance, the world today is dominated by nation states and, they essentially have monopolies on the initiation of force and the currency creation in a specific geographic region. And they're not really contracts. They're not fully voluntary. And I think that we can do better. I think that we have an opportunity as a species, as our circle of empathy is growing, or, when the novel was introduced, for example, or when the internet came out and it kind of helped us connect to the other people outside of our own tribe, that enabled us to do really incredible things and think about the other differently. Think about people in ways where we don't need the same threats of violence to interact well with one another because we understand each other better. And that's a really exciting thing. So when I think about prior to tokenomics, you have owners that just want to, extract as much value as possible. You have customers who don't want to pay for good service at all. They want to pay the least amount of money. And you've got employees who want to do the least amount of work and get the highest amount of pay. And these groups are in complete conflict with each other. These lines of conflict are a problem and they limit the effectiveness that you can have. But when we think about tokenomics, this is a whole new paradigm where everyone fits in all 3 categories very, very nicely. So the owners, they want to maximize their profits, but they're also, as they're thinking about it being a token holder, they're actually looking at going, oh, I'm also a customer and I'm using the token. And then as I use the token, oh, maybe I see a problem. Maybe there's a bug. Maybe there's something I can fix. And when I think about that, I think, oh man, I should go and fix that. So they become an employee as well. And they do the work because as a customer, they want a better experience. And as a token holder, an investor, an owner, they want to increase the value of their tokens. So this to me is just an incredible example of completely aligned motivational incentives. And this is something that the world has never had before. This is something that's going to enable networks to be more efficient than hierarchies. And if you look at this previous model, this is very proof of work, where you might have the incentives of the miners, they want high fees, whereas the users, they actually want an efficient blockchain that works for them. So this new model and how it fits into delegated proof of stake and how it's going to fundamentally change all of how we operate economically is really, really incredible. But again, the issue of governance comes up. Who's in control? Who makes the decisions? And how are these decisions ratified? And this is where I get super excited about the DAC. And of course, I'm going to talk about DACs, part of eosDAC, and there's a reason that I'm passionate about this. A DAC is a decentralized autonomous community. And we have a great 80-second video on our webpage at eosDAC.io you can check out. But essentially, I look at clubs, organizations, nonprofits, even local governments, and someday nation-state governments. I think are going to restructure themselves as distributed autonomous communities, because the synergy that you get with those alignment of incentives where everybody participates, everybody gets to profit, and everybody gets the benefit of using the service that the DAC provides, just creates amazing opportunities. You can have competing service providers, which we don't have with governments right now. You can have voluntary contractual interactions. You can have economic freedom and transparency. You can have property and trust. These are things that, prosperity, these are things that are not easy to do in the current models, because again, all those lines of conflict. So one of the things that's so incredible about a DAC, and if you're an entrepreneur, I'm sure you've run into this situation where you want to build your passion. You have this thing you're so excited about, but you can't build that until you build the 2 or 3 other tools that part needs to exist. And so then you start spinning up other companies just to be kind of the framework for what it is you want to do ultimately. So then you have to actually build these other companies, and they're not your passion. You just need them to exist. Well, the idea of a DAC is you can spin up a decentralized autonomous community, have the actual mechanisms for the corporation as it runs live on a blockchain as smart contracts, and then that DAC can go on and live without you. And it can actually provide the service that you need as you're building out your main passion, your main business. With the shared ownership, responsibility, and purpose, you can ensure that it's directed in a way that you see is beneficial. So this to me is just an amazing, incredible concept. And I think that as more entrepreneurs understand this and they get familiar with this idea that they can spin up a DAC and have it run and just know that that service is available to them, I'm just really excited about that. So are we there yet? No, not quite. We're not seeing a lot of this stuff in the real world yet. DACs don't exist much yet, but please keep an eye on eosDAC. We're doing some really cool stuff as a DAC enabler to make this easy for people. And I've got a bunch of slides running low on time already, so I'll be able to get through all of them. But I did want to show just some quick examples just on the Steem blockchain alone. We have a whole bunch of websites like busy.org or dlive.io. I mean, these are all websites. DTube, it's like a YouTube clone. These are websites that everyday people are using on the blockchain. Here's a SoundCloud clone that they're getting paid for their content. This is real money coming from these applications. Even memes, you can get paid for your memes, or going out and scheduling your dinners, or like an Instagram clone. All these things exist and work now on the Steem blockchain because of delegated proof of stake, because of the efficiencies we get with the block production not being a competitive environment. You've got Twitter clones, you've got link sharing clones, you've got even funding, crowdsourced funding, which is really exciting. Fundition.io. And you might be asking, well, where does the money come from? Well, we'll get to that in a second. We also think about, you can even pay open source developers with utopian.io as an example. And this is an incredible way to use the Steem inflation, the block rewards, to actually incentivize people to do work that otherwise they wouldn't be able to do. And then of course, one of my favorites, steammonsters.com. This is an example of just like a really cool blockchain idea, digital collectibles, provably cryptographically secure identities with each and every one of them. And they have their own market even. You can see some of these numbers are pretty incredible, what people are willing to pay for these blockchain collectibles. And this is everyday people. You can actually use your credit card. So people are going to start using this stuff without even realizing it's running on a blockchain. And that to me is really exciting. That I think is where you're going to get mass adoption. And that's where you're going to start changing culture and getting people to think about the power of these global consensus systems that are done without threats of violence. So I'm very excited about projects like this. And again, you might be saying, well, but where does all the money come from? And this is where I want to bring up again the Bitcoin pizza. It's worth about $60 million, but in May of 2010, it was just the very first purchase with Bitcoin. And if you can understand how in just 8 short years, something that was essentially worthless became worth $60 million, you might start to understand the very nature of financial value itself. So financial value in this new world of tokenomics, people, I think they're realizing that financial value is just an emergent property of price discovery. It's a shared story we tell ourselves, and it's only determined in the moment of transaction. So I'm not going to read this whole quote, but basically this is the Federal Reserve of St. Louis agreeing to that concept that money is just what we believe it to be. And we've had that power taken from us by central bankers and governments for so long that I think blockchain technology is going to enable us to take it back. So in summary, the future is tokenized. The future is decentralized. And the future is transparent governance and cooperation. And that's going to impact every aspect of how we live as a species and how we do economics. So thank you so much. You can reach me on Twitter and Steemit as Luke Stokes. I'm also on Telegram and Discord. And again, I have a proxy, Luke EOS proxy. And if we have time for questions, we can go ahead and jump into that. Are you there, June?
Yeah, one question for Luke, if anyone has any. And there's also the ask a question section in the bottom. So
all right, I see one question here. What do you think about the stablecoin on EOS that Block1 will follow? Oh, I think that was probably for the previous group, or is that for Haven Australian Exchange? If that question was for me, I assume it was. I'm not actually, I haven't looked at that direct one. I've heard of Haven and I've heard the stablecoin ideas. I absolutely love stablecoins. I think BitUSD is amazing. I think the Steem blockchain dollar could be improved, but if we get a reverse conversion, that could be great. I think that's going to be a really important path to mass adoption for sure. So I hope that we have an amazing stablecoin on EOS. Will there be a path for normal corporations to transition to a DAC or other forms of, sorry, that just got bumped up, other forms of decentralized organizations? I absolutely hope so. I think one of the challenges we've already seen with this is if you have traditional investors and you want to do, for example, do an airdrop or you want to do an ICO and you're going to raise these funds, you know, how do you kind of transition your traditional investors into something like this? That I think is one of the challenges that we're going to have to solve. And it might include some kind of like token buyout where those investors, you know, are given tokens in like incongruence with how much they invested. And another aspect would be just the matter of, you know, dealing with the existing corporate structures, because the way a DAC is kind of set up, governments don't know how to deal with them. And so essentially what we've been doing with eosDAC is we have the DAC and then we have these limited liability companies, traditional companies that are like software as a they're like service providers. And that's, I think, the way that things are going to transition. So the authority of the traditional company decreases as we increase the, you know, the amount of things that we do on chain with the DAC.